Are you a little afraid of playing with fire and soldering kind of intimidates you? It doesn't have to.
Yeah, we just shot this awesome Facebook Live video where I showed how to solder. You know, starting simple, we did a small blank onto another blank. So maybe one of them was stamped. We made it sort of with layers. It's super cool.
I just remember this was from Facebook earlier, so the giveaways are over, and ignore any comments like hello from Emerald City. It is just all set for you on YouTube. Come on, check it out.
City. But I thought that was good. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey everybody, it's Lisa and Mel here for Beaducation.com. Today we're going to do some soldering. Who's with us? Who's ready to heat it up?
Torch it up. Let's do it.
So today I'm going to show you a couple different soldering techniques. We're going to show paste solder, and we're going to talk about wire solder. We're going to talk briefly about a bunch of stuff, but what I really want to show you guys is on our website. I'm going to pull up a little image here, but on our website, if you go to Beaducation.com and click on Learn, and you will see a drop down, and if you click on soldering, then let me show you this.
I love this.
I know, this is so exciting, modern technology. So when you get on that soldering link, check this out. You will find all kinds of things. So these are the classes we recommend in this order. This is a little shopping guide, a little talk through all the stuff that you need. So where today we're going to be, you know, pretty brief and show you just how easy it is. If you want more information, this is where you want to go to. You want to go to the site, click on Learn, drop down to soldering, and we have built a whole page just devoted to soldering.
Right. Of all the questions that you guys used to call or email, they're all on that page.
Yeah, there's a FAQ at the bottom, so lots of stuff on there. It's good, it's good, it's fun. So let me show you a couple of things here. Today what we're going to do is just a really, really simple soldered pendant. So this is just I think it's a 16 millimeter sterling 20 gauge blank, and I have soldered on an L. So you may be wondering, what do I do first? Do I solder or do I stamp? I think in most cases, it's very project dependent, so please don't take this as the final answer. But in most cases, I would stamp first, just because it distorts the blank a little bit, and you want to make sure that you get it stamped how you want it, flatten it back out, make sure your thing you're soldering on top is flat, and then solder the two. Now, if there's ever an instance where you want to have something soldered in the middle and then the stamping perfect around it, that might be the case to solder first and then stamp. Just make sure your solder is on there, your piece is soldered really well, so when you stamp, you don't launch it, you know. Did you get that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is one with an L and just some stamping on it. Here is a bar that I stamped. So my daughter's graduating today from 8th grade, so I made her this. She has 4 shirts that just say nope. So I made her a necklace that just says nope. It's just so loosey. And that right there, yep, it's a gold-filled solder. I mean, a gold-filled heart. So yes, your next question is, can I solder gold-filled? You can. You just need to be very gentle and soft so that you don't overheat or torch that gold fill, which will remove the gold fill bonded part, but that's a very, very thick layer. So I solder gold fill all the time. Just use a light part of your torch, use an easy solder, and don't go in full blast. And then you've got a little mixed metal there.
Cute.
Any questions so far? Anybody see anything pop up? Or Mel, can you think of
Not
anything?
yet.
Okay. So these are some of the things I pulled. The camera's not going to like this black background, but that's okay. It's going to make my hand look like a ghost. These are some of the things I pulled to show you to solder on. Today what we're going to do is I've stamped this piece right here, the little fun border, and then I'm going to solder on this L. So both of these have been stamped first. I then made sure that they're both really, really flat, because you got to make sure there's no gap between the two pieces or they won't solder well. Remember, soldering won't fill gaps. If you have pieces that are warped, before you go to solder them, anneal them and flatten them. And you can flatten them maybe with a plastic mallet on a bench block. That works really well, and then you're not going to hurt it, you're just going to flatten it. You might, if you are worried about dings in your bench block, maybe put a piece of leather on there, or hard plastic. Okay, so make sure that everything is really flat or it won't solder.
Also, do you have to worry about if you use oils or lotion on your hands, like that you don't want that to get on the blanks?
Thank you, for sure. Okay, so not only they have to be flat, they have to be clean. So if that's the case and you have a lot of lotion and stuff on your hands and you get it on here, you're going to have to clean it with either soap and water or steel wool or you know, a tissue and something, or even sandpaper if you're not worried about the texture as extra stitching.
Or penny bright, is that something you could clean it with?
Yeah, but you don't need, that's a little overkill. You just need to get the oils off.
Okay.
If there's like fire scale or something on it, yes, you'll need something harsher like penny bright or pickle or something.
Okay.
Okay, so let's do this. Well, first let's talk about what I've got going here. I've got a sheet that's just a, you know, frankly a gross piece of metal that protects my table. This is a kiln brick. You can use a kiln brick. This is what we put in our beginning soldering kit, or you can use a charcoal block, which I tend to use charcoal. It seems to like retain and reflect the heat a little bit more, but this is great to start with. Here is just an optional tool. It's a pumice pan and it's on a Lazy Susan, and I like it because then when I'm soldering, instead of having to go over here and over here for the torch, I just turn this and then I can get it all angles.
We did have a question if you can clean it with alcohol, like your blanks. Would that be okay?
Yep,
okay.
For sure. Anything that's just going to get that oil off, if that's what's on there. And again, anything harsher that you need to remove, like oxidation or something, you might need something with a little more oomph. Mm-hmm. Here is a quench cup that I'm going to put the piece in here after I torch it. And I've got some solder paste. That's what I'm going to use today because it's very easy for what we're working on today. And I've got some cross-locking tweezers. These are great to hold stuff with while you're placing it because you open it, you close it, and it's pinching it. You don't have to count on your hand to hold it. And I have a solder pick. Those are just the basics. Now the torch I'm using today is a Max Flame torch. It's just a big bushy flame. We sell a couple other torches that have a smaller flame. The blazer gets to the same temperature. It's just a smaller, more pointed flame. I really like this for stuff like this where I just want to heat the whole thing up and have it solder together. Cool?
Very cool.
Any questions?
Nope, not so far.
Not so far. Okay, let's get into it. So first of all, I need to pull my hair back. I need to put these bad boys on. And I need to get anything out of here that is flammable. Yeah, so this
like
this guy's got to go.
Or alcohol wipes.
That's right, no
Or
alcohol wipes.
or steel wool. Oh my gosh,
tell you
it's
guys,
like 4th of July with steel wool.
That's true. I have also soldered and had acrylic nails and caught a couple nails on fire.
Wow.
I know.
Thank you
So you
for
gotta
doing
watch
that
it.
for us. You made the mistake for us. Okay, so everything is clear here. I'm also wearing natural fiber clothing. You want to make sure you're wearing cotton. So any synthetics, if something melts on it, it's going to melt to your skin. Not a good time. Okay, so here is my little thing. I'm wiping it off with my shirt right now to make sure that I don't have any gunk on it. And you know, to clean it also, you can just use a
What is a quench cup and what is in it?
A quench cup is a metal cup like this. You can use a glass cup or anything. It's just water. Mm-hmm. And it's just going to cool my piece when I'm done soldering it.
So you could use just a mug, your husband's coffee cup.
Sure. Yes, definitely. Okay. Now I am going to zoom in so we can try. I hope this works. Hope you guys can get a good view of this.
It's looking good. It's looking great.
All right.
It's very focused.
Awesome. Awesome. That's me giving a thumbs up. That didn't quite work. All right, so the solder I'm going to use is paste, and I'm going to use easy. I'm going to use easy because it has the lowest melting temperature. So if you're only doing a one step, then you might as well go for easy because it melts faster and then you're not going to worry about over torching anything. And I'm just going to apply a little bit on the back of this heart. So let me get this heart in my tweezers. Okay, so I've got them like this. And I'm going to extrude. You can, these paste containers come with these little hypodermic needle things. You can take it off, you can leave it on. I like to leave it on because it just, if you push, you get just the right amount out.
Then you don't lose it too.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but it's just a teeny little bit. And I'm gonna just place it on the heart. It's not coming off. That happens, that little bit may have just been dry from not using it for a while. Okay, see that? That might be excessive, but I'm going to leave it because if it overflows on the edges, you can see what that looks like. Now it's also silver solder, so if it overflows on the edges, it shouldn't be a big deal. But I'm going to kind of spread it around a little bit. Spread the love. Some of it kind of stuck to my pick, so I am actually going to put a teeny bit more on. Any other questions popping up from our audience?
Not yet.
Do you have to use silver solder with silver?
You should, because it does run to the edge. Oh my gosh, I've had so much coffee, I'm like shaking. And then it will show.
Okay, so copper would work. It's just that you run the risk of it showing.
Yeah, you don't want a different color on there. All right, so now is where you're going to pay really close attention to where you want this to sit, because that's going to be its final resting point. So I am going to just lightly put it right there. Now it's sticking. Now this is off. I'm going to shift it. It's not ideal because what's going to happen is it's going to spread a little bit of the solder, but I think it'll be fine because there's really not a lot on there. So I'm just going to get everything. How's that look?
That looks great.
I don't know if you guys can see that really well. All right, I'm going to heat this up. Let me walk you through this. I'm going to back out a little bit here. I'm going to heat this up. I'm going to come in with my torch, not when you turn on your torch, you'll see a blue cone, and the tip of the cone is the hottest part. I'm not going to just come in and hit it with that hottest part because it's just too much. You have to go slow and steady. And make sure that you watch a couple of our classes, especially Kate's beginner classes. She's a pro at this, has written 2 best-selling books, and she can really walk you through this in a great way. But we're going to come around. You're going to see a little bit of smoke, which is going to be the binder burning off. And then the flux is going to melt a little. And then you'll see, hopefully, I don't know if you guys can see it, a little flash of silver right around the edge. And that's when you know that it has soldered. Are you ready?
We're ready.
Are you excited?
Yes.
So excited!
So for those of you guys that are just starting out, I would suggest getting some copper, even if you're using silver solder. It's not a big deal for practice, and you have a ton. This will last you your entire life.
And if that heart was copper, we had a question, would you use copper solder paste or is the silver okay?
I would use silver,
Okay.
because the rim is going to show silver.
Okay.
And copper solder paste actually doesn't come out copper colored. It comes out like a dark silver colored. Yeah, it's like a gunmetal. All right, so here we go. And notice I've already put a hole here, so I'm really paying attention where I place that heart to make sure it works with where my jump ring is going to be. All right, I'm going to turn on my torch and lock it in place. You can see the blue cone there. And I'm just going to come around. Now notice that I'm not even really touching the blank. The heat will kind of bounce off of the kiln brick and conduct up to there. And now you can see it turning. A little bit of smoke. I'm going to just keep circling. I'm never really hitting that little heart in the middle. I'm just slowly going around. Pretty soon I'm going to see a little flash. And I think, yep, there it went.
Ooh, we saw it.
That?
We saw it. Yes. That I didn't know if we'd see it on film, but we did.
We saw it. So now I'm going to just leave it there for a second. You can see the little like light green, light gray part around the edge. Mm-hmm. That's some of the flux has flown out there, which is fine, and it kept it from oxidizing. So that's not like solder everywhere. You don't have to worry about that. It might be a little bit. The other thing you run the risk of soldering something after you've stamped the piece underneath it is that some of the solder might get into the stamped grooves. So just keep that in mind. Now this is very, very hot. So I'm going to scoot it to the side. I try not to like come up like this because I'm afraid I'm going to like flick it and it's going to, you know.
And Pam had mentioned that she had actually burned a hole in the quench cup when she had dropped her, and sometimes she just, let's see here, holds onto it with the tweezers for initial quench, then lets go. Have you ever burned a hole? I haven't burned a hole.
I think she might have been using a plastic cup or something. You can't burn a hole in this guy.
Oh.
It's metal. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
All right.
But she said it was actually in that quench cup. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's why you want to wait a minute. You don't want to take it straight off super hot and
Maybe
throw
that
it in
was
there.
it.
Give it like,
And you had waited a
30
minute.
seconds or a
Okay.
minute or something. There's no need to throw it in there right away. All right, so that's what it looks like now. All right, I'm going to have my trusty assistant here. She's going to grab this, which is hot up here, so be careful. And bring
Ellen had
me-
asked, do you need a mask? Are you doing anything? Are fumes dangerous?
You know what, a mask, I'm never going to say no to a mask because it's, you know, it can't hurt.
Right.
But what you want, and thank you for bringing that up, is a well-ventilated room. So right now, we're in a huge room. I would normally have the doors and windows open, but we're also right by a freeway, so.
You guys wouldn't be able to hear us,
Yeah,
right?
you wouldn't be able to hear us. So, a mask can't hurt. You never know fumes coming off here, but no, I don't wear a mask. I've not been instructed to wear a mask, but like I said,
Be in a well-ventilated
you can
place.
walk around the city in a mask and it's not going to hurt you.
Right.
Good ventilation is important for sure. Okay, so there's that. Now from here to clean it, typically you'd throw it in a pickle pot, which is, we sell those online, call them the Little Dipper or pickle pot. And in there you would have either Sparex, which is an acid that will clean it, or citric acid, which is food grade and natural in my preference. And there's instructions that will come with it, but you'll have a warm pickle pot, warm citric acid in there. You throw this bad boy in, go away, come back in a couple minutes, it'll be totally clean. Now when it comes out, it will look like kind of powdery white, but that's okay. One little wipe with the Pro Polish pad. After it's dry, never use Pro Polish pads when something is wet, we'll clean it right up. So that's typically how I would clean this because it's easier. But if you don't want to invest in that right away, you can use Penny Bright, which I think we put this in the soldering kit. Did we?
We do.
Penny Bright, yes.
Yes, how nice of us. Okay. So this, even though it says on here it's just for copper, we have spoken to the manufacturer and it's totally fine on silver. And it works really great. So this is just like a concentrated citric acid thing for polishing. It will work great on your copper pots and pans. But I've got water in here and I'm just gonna show you how great it does at cleaning. See already how it's coming off?
Yeah.
So the less heat that you hit it, or if you start working with the fire scale protectant sealant, like not sealant, but spray like Cupronail, then the less cleaning there will be like this, you know. You can throw it right in the pickle pot and it'll take care of it.
And the Penny Bright, like you don't have to wear gloves. Like that's just.
No, you
Okay.
can if you want, but it's all food grade stuff. It's like I'm exfoliating my hands right now.
I mean, and now that I know it's so safe, this is where you just get your kids to do that work.
Now we're talking. I like it. Okay, let's see what it looks like so far. I know I need a little bit more, but let me just show you. Well, the front looks good. And the back could use a little more. So here's the other thing. From torching it, we've got the oxides that have come to the top here. Some people call it fire scale, but it's not quite fire scale. And they're still down in the impressions. If you clean this right, you won't ever have to add dark to the impressions. You just leave that in there. That will stay. That's like, you know, doing liver sulfur or something. But if you clean a lot, it'll pull it out, and then you go and re-add black to all your impressions.
We had gotten a question of
That
like,
makes
what's
sense.
the ratio of water to Penny Bright? Is it just?
Oh, I'm just using this to rinse.
Okay.
You don't put the Penny Bright in the water. I'm just using this because I don't have a sink.
Oh yeah,
Right
okay.
here.
So you could do
Yeah.
this just over your sink.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So I just take a little swipe and the sponge works really well. Choo-choo-choo-choo-choo. You'll see Stephen James uses this in his enameling class to clean the copper.
Oh, and Jessica asked if you could use aluminum, but you can't do any aluminum soldering.
No, not with the techniques that we teach. Aluminum lets off some toxic fumes. You have to there's probably a way to do it with a different type of solder and maybe no torch or something, but I really have no idea, so I'm not even going to try to guesstimate. All right, how's that looking?
That looks really good.
Does it
Can
look
you
good?
use kiln shelves, like, those kind of like bookshelves, or does it have to be a kiln grip? Someone was asking.
If it goes in a kiln, then it should be fine because it can withstand the heat and it will hold and kind of reflect the heat.
Oh, I know what she's talking about, though. It's like at Home Depot where they have kind of those ones that you can put in the garden too, and then put a piece of wood, and people make kind of their own bookshelves with them.
But that's not a kiln shelf, is it? I don't know, but I mean, basically, when I first started, I did it on an actual brick, and it'll work. The thing is, these things that we're showing you will hold and conduct the heat and reflect it better.
So it makes it easier.
And these things won't stick to it, so that's what you're looking for. And the charcoal kind of it's like got an oxygen component to it that reflects up heat and does a really good job. So with all of those, click on the product on our site and it will tell you more details about it. All right, besides the shine bright all over my hands, which I'm not worried about, this looks pretty good. So what I would...
Could you just remove all of that with just a pro polish pad?
Yeah, we just had the question of, do you need to do the penny bright, or would a pro polish pad remove all of that?
I think the pro polish pad, I'm doing it now as a final step, but it's not really going to remove a lot of that. If you spent all day, maybe, because of the micro abrasives in it. But I would definitely move to something like this, or steel wool, or something like that, because you've got to remove that top.
Oh,
bit of
sorry,
oxides.
Betty. Yeah, she did mean the ceramic kiln, and that I'm sure would.
Yeah,
work,
if it
too.
goes in a kiln, then
Yes.
it can deal with the heat. All right, so for this guy, I've cleaned it so much that from here, I'm not going to do it for you guys today, but I'll just talk you through it. I would actually re-add dark in there because it came out a lot down here. It looks great in the L, but up here, I want it darker. Since this is sterling, I would use liver of sulfur because I feel like it stays and holds the best, and I like the color. So I would take this whole thing now, I would warm it up in warm water, put it in a liver of sulfur bath, which you can find information on that on our site. Take it out, the whole thing will be dark gray, and polish it with just this. But make sure it's dry. And you can also do steel wool and a polished cloth if you prefer that. Does that make sense, that order in which to do things?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And then it will come out looking like this, which is the one that I did earlier today. So you can see how much darker it is, and I did use liver of sulfur with that. Let's push the zoom. Let's see what we can get here. Like pushing the E factor on your car. Ooh, that's nice. There's nice. Now when I polish it, I leave that shadow around the piece that I soldered because I think it looks kind of cool.
Yeah, it kind of adds a little punch.
Same with Lucy's. Nope. Let's see if it can get a little. There we go. Yeah.
We had a few women who said that they had purchased the soldering kit, but now watching this, they're going to go for it. They had been hesitant before.
Come on now. You know what? If you practice with copper, what do you have to lose? Like maybe 5 or 6 30-cent pieces of copper? You're not going to, just be careful with the torch. It's not as scary as it looks. And really watch all of our classes. We've got so many classes on safety, how to deal with your torch, how to work, at your kitchen table. Just watch those and then go for it.
Emily wanted to know because she used Sharpies instead of doing liver sulfur.
Yeah. Sharpie or any of those solutions. But what I don't like about that is the Sharpie looks really weird in the crack here around the Solderable. And even the enamel paint or like Gilder's paste, it just doesn't look
It can clump.
right. Yeah, or the shadows just like too black. I don't know. I would say, again, play with it. So mess around with this and find all the different ways that you might want to go about it. Okay, so before I leave and go back up to the front shot, I want to talk to you about solder wire. So we also sell solder wire. And with this, you need a flux. I would use Handy Flux. And let's say I had done that whole thing with this. What I would have done is taken the blank, put on my kiln brick just like before, add a little bit of flux to where I want to place my heart. And I like to, there's a couple different ways to do it. You can sweat solder, you can pick solder it on, but what I think works well with something where you just soldering something flat to something flat, is I take the tip of the solder wire and hammer it. So can you see here that it's kind of flat? And then cut it so I have a flat piece of wire, a pallion, and you can also do this with solder sheet. It would be probably about, you know, 1/4 of a millimeter, like a really small piece depending what I'm soldering. Now I'd put it on the blank that I'm soldering to. So blank, flux, little piece of wire solder, thing I'm soldering on top. And then what's fun is when you torch it and you solder it, the piece actually drops because it's on this larger piece of solder. And so right when it melts, it drops. You see that flash and you know you're done. So I wouldn't say one is better than the other. It depends on the project, depends on your preference. There's some soldering applications where you would want to have just, hello, you would want to have just paste, or some applications where you might want to use the wire.
I will say we do sell the paste versus the wire. I'd say like 5 to 1. I mean, people really, really do like the paste.
Yeah, well, and part of the reason is that Kate uses it a lot. She teaches most of our classes. But if you go to YouTube, we actually just launched in the last week or two classes with Aisha where she does soldering. She solders a solderable onto a ring, which is so cute. And then another one where she solders a blank onto a ring, so shows you how to get it to the right shape so that you don't have gaps between the piece and the ring, and soldering it down. And for those she uses wire. So if you're curious on how the two different ones work, I would say go look at all those different options.
And then the other question I had forgotten to ask you too is, I know you had said your piece has to be flat. If you had a larger piece that you put on there and you can see a gap, do you pry, where I'd only soldered to one side, can you pry that off and then clean it again and solder it?
Maybe. I would try to not ever get to that point.
Okay.
I would definitely check everything before you solder. And if you see a gap,
Don't solder
don't
it.
do it.
Okay.
So if you see a gap, what you're going to need to do is anneal it. Again, we've got classes on annealing, but you're just going to take the torch and hit it for a little bit of time until it gets kind of like a dull red, and that will anneal it. It softens the metal. So it'll be annealed so that then you can put it on a bench block, hit it with a plastic mallet, and flatten it back out.
Okay.
But then you need to clean it because you can't solder those dirty pieces that will be dirty from annealing. So clean it with Penny Bright, clean it in your pickle pot, get everything clean, put them back together. So, I mean, because what can happen is if that happens and you try to pry it off, you likely totally distort one of them or, you know, crack a little piece out. So just take the time to prep it and get it right.
Yeah, that makes
don't rush
sense.
it.
I have a question.
Claudia has a question. Nice and loud. Let's hear it.
Can I solder brass?
Yes, you can solder brass. Yes, you can copper. You can solder copper. Those all
And
work
nickel.
really great. And nickel. Yeah, not pewter and aluminum.
But you can do silver filled and gold filled if you're careful.
Yeah, silver filled I've had more trouble with soldering. I've had trouble with the bonded silver kind of losing it a little bit. Gold fill I've not had problems with. It's doable with silver fill, but again, go in with a very light touch and take your time. Rather than trying to get it go fast, just take your time and let everybody heat up well, and it'll flow from there.
Another question about brass. Does the color change? I've tried brass before. I think it was brass. And does
Oh,
it
and the color
look
changed.
funny
Yeah,
after?
so sometimes what happens when you solder brass is the copper, that's a little bit of copper that's in there comes to the surface, and you polish it and it looks copper, and you're like, what just happened? I'm pretty sure this was brass. There's a couple ways to get around that, and honestly, I would recommend emailing that girl over there, Laura, because she has the perfect answers for that. There's a couple different solutions you can do to bring it back to the brass copper.
I always say
Color.
just start to enjoy copper. I mean, if that's what happened, right?
So funny.
Love
All
the
right,
one you're
any
with.
other questions?
Steel. We don't deal with stainless steel, but somebody's wondering about stainless steel.
Oh, stainless steel.
We're new to stainless steel. I got nothing for you.
I have
We'll get back to
something,
you.
if for any reason, I mean, I do like soldering, but if for any reason you decide you don't have time for soldering or you're not totally convinced, we had these made where these are pewter and they are allergy resistant, and it looks like you already have a solderable on there, and we made them specifically. We have an arrow, we have a paw, so that it would trick people into thinking, oh my gosh, they have a soldered piece. Isn't that cute?
Is that why we did it, to trick people? Or just because they're
you know
awesome?
what? I wanted to have an awesome design where you didn't have to solder if you didn't want to, or you,
Yeah,
you
I
could
love
have
this
something
arrow.
a little faster if you wanted to. So these are pretty cool. Check them out on the pewter blank section.
Yeah, we just have them in pewter because they're cast.
Right.
Okay, now that I'm back over here, I actually want to show you something that has nothing to do with soldering. So we can call it the tip of the day.
week.
Tip of the week. Let me come down.
Tip of the week.
Tip of the week. All right, I want to show you something I was playing with yesterday, and this has to do with stamping. And this has to do with stamping on two sides of metal. So on YouTube, just last night actually, I launched a class that Aisha taught on stamping on both sides of metal. So you know how when you stamp on one side and you flip it over, it's scratchy. You stamp on that, and you flip it over, and it's scratchy because of the bench block and so forth. And she shows how to use a couple different polishing tools to pull that out. But what I was playing with last night is recommended to me to use something like this is, I don't remember what it's called, but it's hard plastic over a magnet, so it's pretty cool and it sits there. But when I stamped on that, hoping that the plastic would protect the back of my piece, it actually is so thick here that the metal really protruded through, and it gives it this like cushion to dent through on the other side. So I actually didn't prefer this, but I started thinking, well then I just need something that's hard plastic, and I was walking around the office and I found these laminating sheets. So it's just a big old laminating sheet that I cut a piece off, and I used that on my bench block when I stamped. So here's what happened. It's kind of interesting. I think you guys can work with it. So let me get the focus here. All right, so this here, you see where it says no? That's where I stamped without this. And where it says yes, that's where I stamped with this.
I was wondering why that pendant, when I saw it, said no and yes. I was like, this is an interesting message.
So here's the back of no. See how it's all scratched up? Is that clear for you guys?
Oh.
And here's the back of yes. So it's less scratched up. And I will admit, but it does poke through a little bit, but way less scratch. So that's a back of yes, that's a back of no. I really stamped lightly, but this was aluminum, so it impressed just fine. But I will say too that when you go to clean this up, these are light scratches. It actually comes off pretty well with steel wool. Where these, if you get big thick dent, you know, the protrusion of the letter on the back, it's harder to remove that. But this is so much cleaner right here than that I think if you guys played with this, protecting your bench block with something that's not thick, that's the key. Don't use something thick, because then this YES on the back, you would fully see it. It just pushes right through. Does that make sense?
That's interesting.
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
This is new. I haven't told.
Too soft and you're defeating the purpose of the bench block.
Oh, too soft, and Laura said you're
Well,
defeating the
not
purpose
really.
of the
You
bench block.
still get a good. You still get an impression on the front.
But
the
it's not
impression. Whoa! Extreme close up. Hey, Mel. The impression really goes through on the back. You know, so it still impresses well on the front, but not the back is like, oh, that's exactly what you said. So what I'm saying is play with it, because if you stamp lightly like I did, you almost don't see it at all. And then if you are getting the scratches, which happens and is very likely, go ahead and jump on YouTube and watch Aisha's class to learn how to clean them up, which is really easy.
And
really
aluminum
fun.
is a softer metal too, so it's easier to
Yeah.
accidentally hit a little harder than you
Yeah,
thought you
yeah,
were.
but in the class Aisha's using sterling, so even though it's a hard metal, it still picks up those scratches on the bottom. It's pretty
We
cool.
had a question too on how to clean pewter. So you can use pro polish pads, you can use steel wool, you can put them in your tumbler, like same as you would clean other metals.
Yeah, and our pewter is made in the United States, cadmium and lead free, by a very nice man. We love him.
We do.
We love all our vendors. Okay, any other questions come up? Anybody can think
Well,
of? We'll do
a
our
question
giveaway.
came up. I think it was when you were talking about, you know, the no yes pendant. What about hammering with a nylon hammer? I don't know what
Hammering with
Hitting the stamp with the nylon hammer, that's not going to really make a difference. I mean, that will give you
Really
a
flat.
light, if you're just doing that so that the impression is lighter, you're not hitting it with such a hard hammer, you may not get enough impression.
Or is it to flatten back out the places where it protruded more into the
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
And
if you're-
Laura says, or is it to flip it and like try to get those to protrude? That that won't really, it won't push it back in. Maybe a teeny, I mean, if it's excessive, but then you're gonna run into all kinds of issues. With the other side, you gotta protect that, and this side, maybe it won't go all the way through. And you know what, play with it. I don't imagine that would work, but it's an interesting idea. On this one, it's so light, the one that I showed you, that I really don't think a plastic mallet will really push it back through.
I always say this is the bigger question if you're going to stamp on the other side, but the truth is, how many of you ever take your pictures that you're hanging on the wall and turn them around so that the back side of them is showing and just decide to have them like that for a month? Nobody, because nobody cares what the back of your pendant looks like, right? I mean,
Well, that's
it's
totally different though. It's
Well,
like a secret message. If I want to put a secret message
if you
in
intended
there.
on stamping something on the back or the other side, but if you're not doing it, my point is, if it shows through a little bit on the other side,
Oh, yeah,
that's
I don't
okay.
care.
I mean, I wear so much lotion and oil. I hope no one ever looks at the back of my pendants because
For
they look
sure.
a little gunky.
Yeah,
at the end
in
of the
that case, let it go. This is just if you're wanting it to see on the other side. And actually, like traditional American Indian jewelry, a lot of times they worked with stamps forever. And a lot of times they would pick up the piece of metal, look at the back to see that, to know that it was actually hand stamped and not
that.
made by a machine.
Manufacturer.
So
Yes.
that's fine. It's just if you're wanting the front to be to
Of
look a
course,
certain
secret
way,
message, all of that. I hear
two-sided.
you.
So really what you're looking for in a torch is how hot it gets, and then look at your solder and see the flow temperature. And this gets way hotter than the flow temperature of most of our solders, all of our solders, and same with all the torches that we sell. So if you have one of these that you've been making creme brulee with for years, first of all, send us some because I love creme brulee, and it'll totally work. And again, if you're not sure, if you like have some dinky little torch, practice. Give it a try.
Oh, that's
Get
a good
some
point.
copper.
Yeah.
And Solderables, so you guys know, they're on our site. They're tiny little things. We made the word up. It's not a real word, but it's a tiny little thing that looks great soldered on, just like that little heart that I did just now. Also, you can do tiny little blanks or big ones. Sound good? Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and see ya.